not completely across them. And then once we've done that, we'll then open it up to the floor for any councillor proposed recommendations or requests for the 4th of June. Okay. We'll go through table 2 first. So this is consultation matters requiring review and decisions. So the Three Waters investment, option 1 is what we'll keep. I think everyone's probably pretty happy with that. Yep, okay. And just Jenny, if you can just stop me if there's any additional things we need to consider. The Petone assets, we've covered that. Number 3 is the proposed new service for food organics. Fogo, any comment officers would like to make? And then
Mr. Mayor, it's quite obvious from the consultation you saw that there were some a lot of you. This was probably one after Petone. This felt like the area that that there was quite a lot of difficulty with our community, and this is still quite uncertain in a number of ways, just in terms of government funding. I think you're going to come up with a recommendation, but I think we recognise that whilst we need to stay in our advice would be, whilst we stay in the regional procurement right now, given issues around things like participation rates, things like people composting and being able to accommodate that, and community composting, just the kind of the whole gamut, not 100% certainty around government funding at the moment, that you might want to ask us to do a little bit more work to go away. So your preferred option remains in at the moment, but that we report back to you later in the year to see if there are ways we can address the concerns of those communities before we go any further.
Yep, so I'm happy to throw up the recommendation, which I've shared with Joe and the team as well. So that captures what Joe has just outlined, and I think it's a good approach, taking on board the feedback which has been given through the submission process. So, but that does retain option 1 in our budgets and currently, but there is clearly a point in time where we would still have to make an active decision on progressing. Okay. I'm happy to sort of open up before we sort of do it formally, if there's any major issues with that or any other alternative approaches. Oh gosh, a few hands. Councillor Dyer.
Oh, I've been demoted. Oh, that was public excluded. It'll make no sense. Obviously this was done in partnership with Porirua and Wellington. Do we know where they've landed with their consultation?
I know that Wellington is still in. I'm not up to exact speed with where Porirua are. At the moment, in procurement terms, we are in effect going out for initial proposals. So staying in at this point while seeing what else we can do doesn't prevent that procurement, doesn't create problems for our partners, but we'd want to talk to them also around this future work and what might be the best way to meet the very valid concerns of our community.
Cool. I guess just my thoughts on this, I definitely recognise that the feedback on this was slanted away from our preferred option. One thing I don't think we did very well is talking about the alternative costs of the landfill. We're having to bring forward $1.5 million of CapEx at Silverstream landfill because we're filling that thing quicker than we ever anticipated on every model we've ever had. We're filling it much quicker than we need to. This is one way we can stop putting stuff into the landfill. So what the paper kind of said, do you want to pay X amount for food collection? It didn't talk about, are you prepared to pay 10 times that for a new landfill in 10 years' time, or whenever Silverstream's full. So I think this is a good holding pattern for now, but if Porirua and Wellington are committed to doing this, then I think we should definitely look at it.
Yep. Okay. Councillor Stallinger.
Yeah, I wasn't sure where to go on this one, and just reading your recommendation for the first time, I like the fact it's picked up the various concerns that we've heard. The only bit I don't like, and would probably lead to me not voting with you for the first time today, is it reads to me as if there's these concerns, we're just going to look at them, and then we're going to proceed with what we wanted to do. There's no option in there of perhaps substantially changing what we had said we were going to do in response to what we find when we look at these concerns. So I would have preferred it to say these concerns might be met before deciding to approve, to proceed, or how to proceed with our preferred option. Just a little tweak there, and then I would be in favour.
No, I've got no issue with that. I mean, that's in essence what we're still saying. People are comfortable with that change.
Yeah, that's right. The only thing we are doing is suggesting that we leave the investment profile in there to enable budgets to be predicated, but we're very clear that before anything is done to bring that into being, we report back and you choose what you do. So that's the only reason that's in there, and I'm very happy to give you that personal assurance.
Yep. So we can make that, just give me the wording there, which, the edit. Yep.
We recognise it's in the budget. How about proceeding further? And I've given you that assurance, which I'm sure you will hold me to account for, quite rightly.
Abby, okay. Yep. I'll move it. Seconder, Councillor Briggs. Any discussion? All those in favour say aye. Those against no. Declare that carried. Okay. Proposed rates relief for low-income households. Thought there was an interesting mix of views on this. Very interested by is it Pete Matcham's submission. Well, I hold a lot of weight for. I think Pete is a pretty smart guy, and also someone who I think he made some interesting reflections that I certainly hadn't thought about. But yeah, happy to open it up for discussion. Councillor Edwards, then Councillor Brown.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned Pete Matcham and Grey Power, because I initially voted against this even when we were first discussing it. I thought it was a government responsibility, and given the state of our rates and debt, it was not something we could afford, and Pete Matcham just got me across the line. This is renters subsidising people that own homes. Much as I want to help those homeowners that are in a low economic homeowners, I'll be voting against this.
Councillor Brown.
I'll be voting for this. I am a committee member of Tuanui that helps homeowners with housing repairs, and the threshold for them is extremely low. And I've been into many of their houses, and they are in worse condition than many rental homes because they're living week to week. They're homeowners living absolute hand to mouth week to week, and do not cover the costs of having a heater or and a lot of the repairs that have been done for things we wouldn't even dream of need doing. So there is a group of people, and this rates relief, it does have a threshold, and that threshold again is pretty low. It's not a high threshold. It's not like superannuation where, anyone can get it. This has a threshold. So I think there's a place for it, and I think there's a place for us to be supporting people that are in that greatest need.
Okay, Councillor Mitchell.
Yeah, I hear both sides of this argument, and initially I think supported this, acknowledging that it wasn't very well targeted, but I think in particular that one submission pointed out to us that very fact, that we are asking even people on the lowest incomes who are renting to support their fellow ratepayers, not just asking the ones who can afford to or who better off or who agree to it. And I was pleased to see there was agreement in our community to help the people most in need. I'm just not convinced that this is the best way to do that. It's not well targeted. It's helping some of the people in need, but not other people who are in equal need. In fact, those people are being asked to help out their neighbours next door. I hear what Councillor Brown's saying about people's need, and this was never going to be a lot of money, $250 a year for someone. Maybe can buy a new heater, but certainly can't do a lot of household repairs for that amount of money. So I'm kind of left in a place where I feel like unless we can find a better way of targeting assistance to people most in need, this probably isn't the best way. It was also pointed out that homeowners, of course, have other options already. We've provided for them to defer their rates payments, and a really interesting stat came through that 3 people in our entire city have taken up this option currently, or in the last year, I think it was, in recent years. You know, people came in here, other submitters encouraging us to essentially be a lender on reverse mortgage kind of terms, and we could make money off this and all those things. And you know, those options exist, and people do use them, borrowing against their assets to pay their day-to-day costs. So rates deferment in a way is something like that we do already offer to people in need, but it's not really well taken up. Even though every time we talk about it, we ask for there to be promotion about it and people to consider that as an option, rather than not feeding their families, they can reduce, you know, and they can reduce more than $250 a year through that mechanism. So I feel like we already have a mechanism, B, this additional one isn't very well targeted. So, and particularly with that thought that people most in need subsidising other people most in need doesn't really sit very well with me, so I won't be supporting this one either.
Councillor Stellinger, then Councillor Briggs.
I've come full circle on this one. You might remember I was probably joined with Councillor Edwards in voting against it at the draft stage. When I saw the submissions feedback, I changed my mind, thinking, well, if our community wants this, then I'd support it too. But when Mr. Matcham came and articulated much better than I could his rationale, it reminded me of why I didn't support it in the first case, and other councillors have spoken to those, so I won't repeat them, so I won't be supporting it now.
Councillor Briggs.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I support the comments of Councillor Brown, so I won't repeat those. We have very few tools that we can use to support our communities under multiple annual plans and long-term plans I've been a part of. There's been questions around how do we support those that are most in need in our community? Can we give a suburb rate reduction for those that we know that there's most hardship? No, we can't do that. Can we do this? Can we do that? We've discussed it time and time again, and I think this is one way. It's not perfect, but it's one way we can support some people that are in need. Not everyone, but some people. Earlier today, when we talked around reducing the costs to developers around growth pays for growth, and actually slightly going against our principle that we'd already established recently around growth pays to growth, and actually deferring their cost and putting the total cost on our debt for all ratepayers, I don't see the difference. I see this as being a targeted way to support some people with a very low threshold to enable some people to have it a little bit easier for the coming years. It's not going to change their whole world. It's not going to give everything that they need. I agree on that. But it's putting a little bit of support where it needs to go. And again, as Councillor Stellinger said as well, the submissions from our community and listening to our community are saying they're willing to support this. So today I will be voting to retain the rates remission as we've already discussed in the past.
Any other? Councillor Tupou.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I thank all the previous comments. I can only speak for myself, Mr. Mayor, that I will be judged by how we support our most vulnerable in the city, and I support the comments of Councillors Brown and Briggs that there are households out there that are seeing tough times, the cost of living, and they may still want to contribute through the rates, but can't go the full hog. So we have this mechanism in place. Rather than deferring their contribution, Mr. Mayor, they can have some relief in there, but still contribute. And so I think from a compassionate point of view, because we're talking about a lot of things, keywords like, do we demolish, do we cut this, do we cut that? But I think in this case, we need to have some sort of provisional support for our most vulnerable. Kia ora.
Councillor Morgan.
Kia ora, support all the comments from everyone. I agree also there are a lot of mechanisms like reverse mortgages, all those sorts of things. But for me right now, I'm listening to the voice of the people, which is 60%. You could look at the numbers, but I also do feel that this is one small thing that we could do and can do to make that little bit of difference. So I'll support it, be voting in support of this.
Councillor Shaw.
Yeah, I agree with keeping the rates remission, and I think the 60% result that came in indicates that that's what our community want us to do, and I think I'm for supporting those who are in need and vulnerable at this moment, particularly with the cost of living at the moment, so I'll support this recommendation.
Okay. Great. Can I throw up? This is literally me on a little bit on the fly, listening to everyone, and I think it's been a really good discussion. I suppose as an option, an alternative option based on sort of the feedback and where we're at. And I wonder if we were to propose, taking on the feedback, from submissions, but some of the concerns around this not being targeted, that we were, instead of having a remission in place, we were to have, say, a $250,000 annual fund, which could be an emergency relief fund, which could be at the discretion of the chief executive and the chief financial officer around individual cases of rates hardship and issues. So there obviously have to be a little bit of a criteria, but I don't want to over-admin this thing around that. And that would be half the price of introducing a rates remission. So we would be able to pull back half of the cost on the budget. I'm just trying to throw that out there as an option. And people do, as I was just sort of writing some notes to see, people do come to council when they are in these types of positions, and usually it's payment plans or type arrangements, but this would give a bit more flexibility around what that looks like.
Mr Mayor, you'll recall particularly through COVID relief when you asked us what could be done. That was also, we encourage people. We want them to stay in their home. We want them to be able to feed their family. We do have debt write-off, but the reality is sometimes just the whole process of having debt can itself cause mental health. So from our point of view, should this be an issue that council wish to proceed with as an alternative, we can do that because people do approach us and we encourage them to approach us when they are in significant difficulty, but your call.
Okay, quite a few hands gone back up, so I will give it to those who haven't spoken yet. Who hasn't spoken? So we've got Councillor Parkin, Councillor Dye, Councillor Barrett.
Kia ora, Mayor Barry. It's actually a question on your proposal, and it goes to the equity issue. Is that fund available to people who are renting, not just rates?
No, it wouldn't be. I think that's the idea, though, is to try and, yes, it is homeowners at the end of the day, but the idea is to target particularly those who would be in really difficult circumstance. And yes, it wouldn't mean it's available for renters, unfortunately. Councillor Dye.
Thank you. I think I'm really on the fence with this one, if people are keeping a tally chart. I think the beauty of what we had proposed was the ease of administrating it, both for us from a council point of view, but for the people having to fill out paperwork. I think if we're going down another road of you've got to come and prove to us that you've lost your job or whatever the hardship things are, it might just be another thing that's hard for people to do to get a couple $100 from the council off their rates. I'm really torn on this one.
Councillor Barrett.
Thank you. I'm just wondering how this fits in alongside the other fund that we have, the lender of the last resort, where people come to that committee when they're really struggling, whatever it is that they're needing money for.
I am aware of what you're referring to, but I'm not quite sure exactly our involvement at the moment. I don't think we're actively involved. Yeah. Yeah, yeah. No, it's a good point. Okay, any other comments, Councillor Briggs?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for your suggestion. I think if we're going to make a decision on this today still, I think we'd loop it back to the end of the day or take a quick break. It's quite a dramatic change from what we've considered up to this point. Again, I think you're coming up with a solution based on our conversation, but I think for myself, I'll need to take a little bit of time just to consider it in its entirety before voting on what you put forward.
Yep, happy to do that. Again, this doesn't have to be decided today. We could ask for a little bit more information before making a call, and we can make that decision on the 4th of June, if that's of preference.
My preference would be that we vote on what's in front of us that we've already discussed. And then if there's any, we can't achieve an outcome today, then we revisit it at the next meeting. That would be my personal preference.
Yep, okay. So we'll table that one for now, but I think we've had a good discussion, so we will be able to give some direction at either today or on the 4th. Yep, decision on the 4th. Okay, that's fine. Moving through the assets review. Okay, happy with that? Recommendations as proposed? Yes. Development contributions policy, we've covered that. Rates postponement policy, that's just as is. Revenue and financing policy, as is, happy. Okay, now we move to table 3, which is key updates to unavoidable costs. Costs of bulk water from GDUB. It is what it is. Yeah, I think, by exception. Is there any on this list of 6 which you've got any questions on or issues? No? Okay, so we're ticking all 6. And table 4, which is on page 18, so the resource consent fee change. Any questions on that or no, comfortable? Yep. Petone parking fees. Okay. Now I'm going to throw an option up on the. You could tell I was doing the last one on the fly because I didn't have a pre-prepared sort of some thoughts, but I'll throw this one up to get us started. And I should ask: is there any questions first for the team around paid parking on Petone? No. Okay. I think we're pretty well informed. So what I've put forward is noting the public submissions on paid parking in Petone and the particular concerns around timing with scheduled water infrastructure renewals. Taking this feedback into account, agrees to the implementation of paid parking from the 27-28 financial year and agrees to an additional 0.6% rate increase to offset the lost revenue of not introducing paid parking in the 24-25 financial year. Deputy Mayor Lewis.
Thank you. So that last one, number 3, that's only in that year that percentage rate increases applies? Or is it over the whole long-term plan?
It gets built into the base in the first year, so it'll be an increase on top of the 16.9. And then in the year where we're introducing parking again, 27-28, we can take it out.
Yep. So it's basically offsetting the fact that we're not introducing it, but it would be reversed out once it's introduced. Councillor Edwards?
Look, I'm against this. So I started off on parking in Petone pretty gung-ho, and I thought it's high time. This issue's been kicked around for long enough. It seemed inequitable to me that Central Hutt retailers had to live with parking charges, but you might argue our next most buoyant retail area has never had charges. But yeah, having attended some of the meetings down in Petone, I absolutely hear that parking fees, they feel very strongly that it's the wrong thing to do down there, and it's going to worsen a situation for some businesses that are really are on a knife edge, given everything else that's going on. But I have to weigh that up against the desirability of giving people who drive around a nudge to look at different ways of moving around, mode shift, keeping climate change issues in mind. Unfortunately, going to 3 years in the way that's proposed here furthers that inequitable situation with CBD people. In fact, it makes it worse because we're going to put the charges up from $2 to $3 and increase the daily fees there. They've got significant disruption coming up too with Riverlink. I recognise that the pipeworks in Jackson Street are going to be very difficult. And the upshot of all of this is that we're going to be putting the rates up as a result. And if there was one very clear message to us in the submissions, it was they don't want a rate increase. But recognising things are tough at the moment with the layoffs in the government area and with interest rates being high, although we have some information elsewhere in our papers that tell us that interest rates could start to come down early next year. I wonder, instead of putting this off for 3 years, we make the decision now that we will bring in paid parking in Petone on March 31st next year to give that breathing space and to hopefully give retailers some indication of what our intentions are, and hopefully maybe the economic conditions that we're in may be looking a little bit brighter then. I'll leave it at that.
Very good.
Oh, good. It's good. That's what this is all about. So any other views before maybe we start a bit of a discussion over those? Councillor Parkin.
Kia ora. Likewise to Councillor Edwards, I have some significant concerns that if we leave Petone parking free, we are putting more inequity on particularly our South End business group and the rest of the central Hutt from that point of view. I also acknowledge that it is difficult, it is perceived as difficult by businesses that we are taking away an advantage that Petone has. I note that in one of our options we had the first hour free. I would actually suggest that we look at doing a first half hour free, which still encourages people to go and do those short shops at Petone, but also starts getting people used to actually paying in that environment.
Yep, no, I think that's okay. We can throw that into the melting pot for discussion. Councillor Mitchell.
Not much of a variation from me, but just for context, I think, I came into this meeting today having heard very strongly that message that our rates increases are already too high, which actually partly informed my thinking on the previous topic of discussion, knowing that there were things in our meeting today that were going to push rates increases even higher unless they were offset. I spent some time down in Petone at a few lively meetings down there during consultation, and certainly amongst the business community, this was by far the #1 topic of conversation. And, told those business owners and the residents at the Residence One to think carefully about it and how it could be changed, the proposal could be changed if we were to adopt paid parking. How we could do it in a way that wouldn't have so much impact. Not a lot of feedback, to be honest. Not a lot of people came in here suggesting tweaks or don't. In fact, Kaz Young in public comment today did make some really wise comments about times of day and days of week and things like that would be better targeted for parking. I actually think the options in front of us today have been quite well thought out, and certainly based on Kaz's public comment, removing paid parking in weekends is not a logical thing to do when that's where the biggest demand is anyway. And I think a lot of those people, they are the visitors who will come anyway. But yes, the first hour free example, I really like it, partly because as I questioned a business owner yesterday, it doesn't actually change what's already available in Petone. People are on Jackson Street currently only entitled to 1 hour of free parking. Introducing first hour free parking, according to the calculations in here, would still generate revenue. It would lose some of that revenue, obviously, but it would still generate revenue. And the rating impact of doing it that way is 0.28%, less than half of what's proposed by doing this. So I'm really in favour of that first hour free. It literally does not change parking entitlement on Jackson Street, which is where the concern of those business owners have been. I think there are other things we could explore, probably later, not for this for this plan, but as part of our parking review. Peel Street Car Park, I think, is an interesting one. It's a council-operated parking building without going up, essentially, parking bay, which is currently free for a good amount of time. That could be operated as a paid parking, car park to generate revenue, particularly for the people who need to park for longer than the 120 limit on Jackson Street there. They could be charged to park for that longer period. But anyway, I certainly, my preference today would be first hour free on Jackson Street. Doesn't change the conditions for parkers or businesses who have car parks outside of them, but it does generate revenue and requires a lesser rate increase than what's proposed on the board up there.
Councillor Briggs. I think we've got 4 different options at the moment.
I'll give you a fifth. And so, Mr. Mayor, I think there's a couple of points to be made. One, I'm only in favour of putting in the infrastructure to do parking meters and get fees if we're going to actually utilise it. If we're putting in the infrastructure and paying for that cost, that's significant. We need to be recouping the cost for that investment up front, but also for the actual outcomes that we're looking for as well. And one of the key outcomes that we have in our integrated transport strategy is around making other options, modes of transport, more favourable for our community. And as we've heard under public comment over the last 2 days, it was referred to as having a space where people can have their belongings looked after, you know, having a car in the parking space and having it, utilising that area. If we're going to have majority of Jackson Street utilised by stationary vehicles and we're not charging them for it, we're actually incentivising people to be driving their cars to Jackson Street. So from a climate perspective, we also need to be looking at this as well. And ultimately, if we're looking at funding and how our community wants to continue to fund parking, whether it's through user pays or whether it's through our rates, we need to make sure we're actually making a wise decision around the level of investment that we make into this decision. And that goes back to the hour free. I think it's a feel-good factor. But as you know, Mr. Mayor, one of this council's most costly exercises in doing a research project was with our CBD parking in the past. And what came back from that, from our retailers, is they didn't see a boom in their sales due to free parking trail. What happened was cost neutral or maybe a little dip or a little bit up. It wasn't a significant impact. And so for us, I think we need to hold that recent information as we make this decision as well around parking in Jackson Street. I know it's really emotive and it has been for a very long time. And it's probably part of the reason why there hasn't been a firm decision made up until this point. But whatever we do, let's do it with the long-term lens of it and making sure we're making a good investment rather than just trying to get a midway point which may not actually get the outcomes that we're after.
Councillor Barrett.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll just keep this very brief. I do support the paid parking in Petone. I do support the first hour free. I think we are only delaying the inevitable. And I do like Councillor Edwards' suggestion that we do implement this sooner rather than later.
Councillor Dyer.
Thank you. Like Councillor Edwards, I went along to a lot of the JSP meetings. I think you said you went along to a lot of them, but you went to all of them. Yeah, and I really went into this initially thinking along the same lines, like it needs to happen, but hearing very strongly from the business community. I think we really do need to, on the record, commend JSP for the sessions that they held. I attended, I think, nearly every single LTP meeting we had, and we had more people at one JSP meeting than I think we had almost collectively at all the other LTP sessions we hosted. So, yeah, we really do need to commend them for the amount of engagement they did with their community, both in the quality and the quantity of the people that were there. People have asked us over the last 2 days whether this is for revenue or control. I think we need to be clear this is for both. This is hurting our bottom line if we don't implement it. But from a control point of view, the only tools that council has to control the supply of parking, other than building a parking building, which we are definitely not doing, is by charging for parking. And we are going to have a significant issue in Petone in the next 5 years when our CBD is absolutely disrupted by Riverlink. There are already businesses moving from our CBD to Petone because they want to stay in the Hutt, but they don't want to put up with the disruption that Riverlink's going to give. So while this acknowledges there'll be some disruption with the water pipes on Jackson Street, that pales in comparison to what disruption we're going to have with Riverlink. We've done a parking review. It was a couple of years old now, but that showed us that the parking is just so overly demanded in Jackson Street that it creates congestion in the surrounding streets. It's a few years old now, but things have only got worse since then. It's not been talked about in our papers, but it could be good pulling out that old report we did. I think it was probably like 2 or 3 years ago, where we had cars driving around the streets all day, every day for about 3 months, taking photos of number plates, and gave us some really good data on parking use. And it told us how many people were parking on the street as workers, how many were shoppers. There were some really good insights in there, which I think might be useful for this conversation. I'm less against the 1 hour free option for the same reasons as Councillor Briggs. If we're going to all the effort of infrastructure and machines and the look and feel of those machines, we need to do it. Also, if we are to review these things as we should in a year or two's time, like we did with the free parking, I feel like doing a halfway house of 1 hour free might just murky the waters a bit. Yeah, so to maximise the actual CapEx investment we need to do, I think we just need to either do it or don't. And finally, I think just to the businesses that did strongly tell us that this will hurt their businesses, I think they really are selling themselves short. People don't go to Petone for the paid parking. They go to Petone because it's the best heritage shopping street in the country. And if you're not prepared to come to the best street in New Zealand and pay $3 an hour to shop, then you're probably not the sort of customer that they want on the street anyway.
Councillor Morgan.
Kia ora. Yeah, I think this is a really emotional issue, as we all know, and we've heard from the businesses. But I guess for me, there are businesses here in Central Hutt that are currently being impacted, I guess, through parking and costs and things. So for me, I'm coming from an equity lens around what does that look like across our city. So I do agree at this stage absolutely with that first hour free. And I think once we get them in, we could have that as a segued approach. I really appreciated Kaz with her thoughts about, you know, you go to Wellington, you pay to 8 p.m. Where are we with that here in the Hutt, you know? And so I think we could do some work around a segue of, we do that to start with to really support our businesses who are fantastic, but actually just start changing the mindset of people around, okay, they see this coming, they can see it's going to be happening, and then we can look at a strategic plan across the city with all of the disruptions, which are going to be significant, about what that's going to look like for fairness, for the impact on those users with cars. And that takes our climate perspective into, I guess, the forefront as well. Thanks.
Okay, Councillor Salinger, then Deputy Mayor Lewis.
This is another area where the public consultation and feedback has changed my views. The other one was on the wharf. There might be some others too, but I originally thought it's the right thing to do. At least to get the consultation feedback as far as introducing the paid parking. I went to the meetings in Jackson Street, not as many as Councillor Edwards, but 2 of them. And I must say, over many years, I've often heard businesses coming to council or talking to me, times are tough. But this was different than any of those other times. There was a passion that I think in some of them was born out of a survival instinct. And, you know, their survival was being threatened, at least as far as their business and their investment in that business was concerned. Now, paid parking or higher rates charges, aren't the make or break of any business. But I think the feeling was they're just being beaten down by so many factors, and this is just another one. So for me, I came to the view that coming into today, wasn't sure if I have any others thinking the same way, but my thinking was, we've got all this pipe work. It's going to be disruptive. I don't know whether it's more or less than Riverlink, but if cars aren't able to get down the street, I think that could be quite severe for Petone. That I would recommend that we commit to introducing parking meters once those pipe works are finished. Now, I'm not sure how long that would take, but I think 3 years is probably a good, could be quite close to that, or close enough at least. And so I was very pleased to see this recommendation here, and I'd be supporting it. Bit less convinced about recommendation 3, because councillors have heard my views on the level of rates increases already. And I'll perhaps come back to that at the final meeting when we're signing off the plan. So for the purpose of these recommendations, I'd be prepared to support all 3 of those.
Just a question for John. I suppose one question is around that renewal work, and also are there options of, if there was an installation of meters now, would you have an ability to, I suppose, suspend charging in certain parts which were suffering from disruption, or have that sort of flexibility based on what was sort of happening on the ground?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So in terms of the disruption, I think Bruce briefed the Infrastructure and Regulatory Committee a week or 2 ago that it's up to 3 years. So that is quite a big chunk. So, and if that work, timing's still to be determined, but potentially towards the end of next year that would start. So if meters were to come in 1st of July, well, I think it's going to take a bit of lead in time from now anyway, so say 1st of September or 1st of October, they could potentially be in for a year, and then block by block, so the water renewals will move, but there'll be large chunks that will be out for quite a period of time. So yeah, we can turn them off. We'll still have to pay the rental. We'll still have to pay some charges on the machines, but it is possible to pause charging in certain areas as the water works progress. So.
Councillor Edwards, Councillor Brown.
Could I also ask a question? Is it feasible, John, to have a system first hour free? Because that kind of implies we're going to change Jackson Street to 2-hour parking.
So we can put in first hour free. In terms of Councillor Parkin's question before, half hour we'd need, I don't know whether that's feasible with the machines and the technology, but we can certainly go to first hour free. What that means is that people will need to put in their number plates and for how long they're going to be in there at the time in order to park anywhere. So.
Okay. Just on that, because the other question I had was around half an hour. So why would half an hour, first half an hour, not be viable?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. So we'd need to check that with our supplier whether the machines do first 30 minutes or not. So we're not aware of that happening anywhere else, but it's something we can look at and report back.
Yeah. Okay. I think if there is a decision to go introduction or first hour free, it would be good to get that advice, because I think it's quite a sensible thing that Councillor Parkin's put forward as well, if it's possible. Councillor Brown and then Councillor Mitchell.
So for the pipe renewals, will we turn off the parking in Lower Hutt when we do Riverlink? Will that be the same position that would have?
Yeah, well, I think it's a fair question. So I think basically the answer would be it's up to us, really, if we wanted to take that into account.
And I guess how much would that be in lost revenue?
Yep. No. Great point and a question. Councillor Mitchell.
John, it was just a question of clarity following up from Councillor Edwards asking how first hour free works and is that a change to 2 hour parking? All paid parking we're proposing is a change to 2 hour parking, isn't it? Any of the, all in or first hour free, either way, it's a change to 2 hour parking.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yeah, that's correct.
Okay, what we could do just to, sorry, Deputy Mayor, yes.
Thank you. Great debate. And it's amazing to hear that one thing in one area is going to affect everywhere else. And it's really awesome to hear the balancing going on. I know very well what the ratepayers of Jackson Street think about paid parking. They've been opposing it forever. But I do think we cannot put the burden on the rest of the city as well. We have to look at somewhere to balance everything up and turn over with business. And Councillor Dyer was right. People do come to Petone for the shopping. And as I heard last night at another meeting, they come for the free parking. But we all know if we want to go somewhere to shop, you go and you pay if there is parking. And that's how I do it if I go to Wellington. So I do not really believe that the businesses will suffer from this because their product is good. The pressure, I think it will go on, is the side streets. So my question is of officers is the latest reviews, how often do we do parking reviews in areas like this, especially Petone is quite unique with having residents all around and they're the ones who do carry the burden. But the recommendations the Mayor has put up are good and everyone's put up great recommendations. So I'm supportive of the paid parking, but in what model, I don't know.
Can I suggest maybe a way forward is that if we were to vote on the introduction of paid parking in Petone, so that's quite a significant stance or shift to make, we could then ask the officers, based on all of the discussion we've had, to come with some options around the timing and hour versus half an hour free, and we could then make that a more informed decision, I think, on the 4th of June. How do we feel about that? Because I feel as if we're all in agreement that paid parking will come in. It's just a case of when and how we do that. That's what that's what I'm hearing from everyone. I haven't heard anyone say I'm against paid parking and being introduced in Petone. Yep.
I just feel a bit comfortable about voting on that without knowing when, because I'm definitely against it being implemented now. And if so, that was the downstream effect of me voting on the favour of.
But that's the 4th of June. You would, if the option on the 4th of June was to introduce it now, you would vote against it.
Yeah, but why do we need to vote now, I suppose, if we're going to vote on it on 4th of June?
Well, I think it gives some certainty for officials. It's about giving direction that to narrow down the options. So we're not saying paid parking's off the table. This is what today's about as well. If we can't make a decision, we need to give some direction for officers to form up some better options.
I'm personally happy to have that vote and vote on that now, as long as it's clear that it's no free parking, half an hour, 1 hour, not just half an hour and an hour being considered in the information from officers. I think we need to look at paying from the minute that you arrive to the minute that you leave as part of that conversation as well on the 4th of June.
Yeah, no, it's pay straight away, hour free, 30 minutes free, timing. That's what would be coming back. Okay. Councillor Mitchell.
Not working this time. I have one reservation about this recommendation, which is that, as I said, today a bit for me is about making decisions in context with one another and thinking about the impact on rates as we go. And we have decisions in front of us, options in front of us that all amount to actually to different rates increases this year, and some of them different rate increases each year for the next 3 years. It kind of makes it a bit harder to make those decisions in context with one another. So I'm happy for it to come back in on the 4th of June. However, I may change my view on some other things on the 4th of June once we have a
Yeah, absolutely. That's right. Okay. So I will move the recommendation that council council agrees with the introduction of paid parking in Batoni and directs officers to provide options around timing and 30 minutes free, 1 hour free, or pay from the first minute, whatever, or just full pay or whatever. Yeah. Okay, so I'll move that. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Briggs. Any discussion? Yeah.
Just in light of the public comment, I just want to really change the word timing, because that might be taken as the timing of 9 to 5.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Implementation. Yeah.
Implementation date.
Yep. Okay. Implementation date. Yeah, great. Do you want to read that out, Kate, just so everyone's comfortable?
That council agrees with the introduction of paid parking in Petone and directs officers to provide options around timing of the implementation date and half-hour free, 1 hour free, or full payment.
Yep. Okay. Okay, any discussion? Councillor Dyer?
Just when that does come back to us, if we could have the addition of that last Petone parking survey we did, some of that data from our transport team, I think would be really useful as well.
Yep. Okay.